What's up, YouTube? It's been a while. We're going to talk about a show I just watched, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon Prime. I started watching the show first time when it came out. Back then, there was not really any shows that was worth watching, I'm not gonna lie, on Amazon Prime. I was just too cheap to have all these other TV shows or TV subscriptions such as Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, or YouTube Premium or what have you. Unfortunately, I like buying stuff, so I do have that free shipping with Amazon Prime, and with that came with the Amazon Prime shows. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel was the only show that was worth watching really back then. Now there's a couple more shows now that are worth the salt, but back then it was like really dry. I used to watch comedy shows in LA back when I lived there for like about 5 years. I used to go to comedy shows, live comedy shows all the time. So much so, every Thursday I would go by myself, by the way. I would go that I still get texts from shows asking me to come to their show and watch it for free as long as I pay for the drinks. I know it's like kind of like a normal thing when you're a regular, like when you get these shows, this is how they fill seats, so to speak, or they try out like these comedians. But like I got into pretty good shows, I discovered some pretty great comedians. What attracted me to the show was that essentially I thought it was a stand-up. It felt like a stand-up, but it was so much more than that. The show is geared towards fashion and New York and old timey, just really interesting part of history and human history. I don't know how accurate it is. The show was more than just a fashion show or the comedy show or whatever. It's about the life really of women, the life of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and she came from a quite conservative family of I think uh Jews. They're Jews, right? Yeah. So they have Jews have specific traditions. They have very ritualistic things. And me being Catholic, I kind of feel that way sometimes in my life. Like there's so many traditions that you kind of have to follow, but I don't know which religion has more Judaism or Catholicism, but it's kind of interesting to just see that in a different lens. And as a woman in that year of 1960s or whatever, I can imagine that's kind of really hard to be a budding comedian. I know it's a work of fiction. I don't know if there's any comedian that was actually famous around that time or if it's loosely based on a female actress. But frankly, I don't care because the story itself like took you on an adventure and really portrayed the different aspects of being a woman struggling as a comedian. Like it's really hard. Like they were really spot on some of the aspects of being a comedian, trying to make it big. I'm not a comedian, but like I heard a lot of stories of like their struggles, and I got really acquainted with like a lot of like their stories and their adventures. And the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel was pretty much that and more. It's not just a slapstick comedy of like, here's a bit for 10 minutes or here's a 5 minute bit. Honestly, some of the jokes were not funny. Like maybe it's just not my cup of tea. You don't find everything funny. Some of them were funny, like really funny, but like a lot of them weren't. But it's okay. Like it's still the presentation and the way they delivered it, and Rachel Brosnan, I think, is the name of the actress. I never really am good at actress names or actors names. I really suck at it unless they're really good or that they stand out. So I think the show was very entertaining to watch. Again, coming from the fashion industry, I used to work for a company, for a fast fashion company, as an analyst, not as a fashion designer or whatever, but as an analyst, an inventory analyst, the most boring job in headquarters. But I kind of appreciated fashion because of working there for, I don't know, 2 years, and might I say it's very impressive the way they really went with the different colors, the different palettes. I'm sure there was a lot of work done and research on like how to make the show feel the way it felt. Like you really did feel it was like an old movie, and yet you see it in ultra HDR on your 80 something inch TV, and it just pops out in 4K, and I'm like, dang, that's great. But like, and yet, it didn't feel like modern age. Like you never were confused, unlike other shows where you were confused. Like even though it's in black and white, you kind of can't tell like what age it is. But every nook and cranny, even the way they speak or walk in that show, were well presented, and I was really impressed. And some of the episodes, like in the middle, were kind of like boring, because that's a show that's been running for years, and it's what happens when you keep watching the same thing over and over again, right? But like eventually, like they try to keep it short, and they have like each episode. There's a purpose. There's a whole setup for stuff and like character building, and there's a couple filler episodes, but for the most part every single episode was meant for something to build your buy-in with the main actress, the marvelous Ms. Maisel, in this case Midge. And it got away with a lot of shock factor at first. The first season was just nudity and like drug abuse or alcohol, a lot of alcohol actually, and some really brass words or crass words rather. But I try to like skip past those. Not saying I didn't watch it. I'm too lazy to skip it. I'm just like I brush it off, and it's just like what they're really portraying is more of like what the era was about, like what that whole show was supposed to be in, right? Like, and imagining New York in 1960s was a lot more crass than what was portrayed on the show, but it kind of felt like it was appropriate. It was a little toned down, you would imagine, because it's still supposedly, I think it's PG-13 if I'm not mistaken. But overall, I think the show was great. If you haven't watched it, I think you should watch it. If you already have Amazon Prime, it is free. You can you can just watch it and binge it and finish all of it in one go. And I don't think it's gonna be a waste of your time. If you can't find a show that you want to watch and you already had the thing, just go ahead and watch it. I think the actors and the producers and the staff and the creative team, everybody just like were amazing. Script writers, the editors, and everyone else. Like dang, that was an impressive show. I I don't know, like it was good because like they really wrapped up loose ends. I don't like I don't like series or shows that kind of like leave you hanging. They really had a conclusion. It wasn't a Disney happy ending, but it was a happy ending in my opinion. Okay, that might have been spoilers, but like when you get to the last season, it pretty much tells you the way they write it, like what happens at the end of Midge's life. And it was very interesting because you are so into her life the whole time. Like every single day basically is an adventure, and yet they show you like what it looks like afterwards, like after everything. And it didn't feel rushed. It's not like Game of Thrones. Ugh. But like it was, you knew it was ending at that season, and I was like, yeah, this is how it should go now. Like how are they gonna end it is the question. And it was interesting. You really got the buy-in of the whole story, and you got to go along with Midge and her friends and family and her enemies. And the whole time, sometimes you would root for Midge, sometimes surprisingly you won't. That you would hate her actually at times, and a lot of times you'd be heartbroken for the various missed opportunities. But that's what it is. Like the whole thing was a an adventure to get to her goals, and I think we can learn a lot from that, from those goals, and from the way she approached life, and the way she never gave up. She almost did multiple times. Actually, at one point, one could argue she gave up, but uh, life, it's a story of life, and I think you can get strength from it because of the way the writers wrote it and the way uh, they presented the message of the the protagonist. And again, if you haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it. And have a good night or have a good day wherever you are and whenever you watch this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.